so I could see, and it was real easy. This morning's scripture is Luke 29 through 19, the parable of the tenants. He went on to tell the people this parable. A man planted a vineyard, rented it to some farmers, and went away for a long time. At harvest time, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. He sent another servant, but the one also was beat and treated shamefully, and sent away empty-handed. He sent still a third, and they wounded him and threw him out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, "What shall I do? I will send my son, whom I love. Perhaps they will respect him." But when the tenants saw him, they talked the matter over. "This is the heir," they said. "Let's kill him, and the inheritance will be ours." So they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and kill those tenants and give the vineyard to the others. When the people heard this, they said, "May this never be." Jesus looked directly at them and asked, "Then what is the meaning of that which is written? The stone the builders rejected has become the capstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, but on whom it falls will be crushed." The teachers of the law and the chief priests looked for a way to arrest him immediately because they knew he had spoken this parable against them, but they were afraid of the people.
Kind of as a continuation from last week, we're still talking about the teachers and the chief priests. And if you recall last week, we had that. Oh yeah, Laurel, they make these things called bifocals now. They're wonderful. They really are. I got trifocals. That's when you're getting old, I guess, or your eyes just don't want to work anymore.
I've had trifocals for 50 years.
And you still haven't gotten them right?
Still getting old.
Okay. Well, if we put our heads together, maybe we can figure that one out. But we'll see how that all plays out. But anywho, so last week we had the conversation. We were talking about the chief priests again. Remember when Jesus went and flipped the tables, and yet he never lost focus on what was important. And this is kind of a continuation of that same series of events. It was great because the parable today is the parable of the tenants. And again, that whole parable, when you look at that parable, it has to do with Jesus picking on the leaders. There it is. So God provides them this beautiful vineyard. And I think it's in the Gospel of Matthew. It tells the same parable. It's a little bit more in depth where it says the owner of the vineyard planted the vines, went ahead and dug a wine press, turned around and put in a watchtower, built a fence, all these improvements he made to the land. Then he turned it over to the tenants to work, to operate, and to grow the fruit. And it's much like that in God's kingdom. God's provided all these things for us, and we just have our small part to do. So what Jesus was making fun of or mocking or criticizing, or it's a parable where they still didn't get it, was basically along the lines of, hey, listen, God's provided all this to you, the teachers of the law, and yet you still don't get it. Your idea of how to make things go is to kill people and kill things so that you get your way. Or, as some people would say, greed. And that's the same thing what drove last week's. But as a continuation on this, I love the tax day is coming, which it is, and if you haven't filed, well, you have an opportunity to, I'm sure. Multiple ways of doing that. But one of the next things that Jesus pivots to, they're trying to trick him now because, again, they just tried to find a way to arrest him and they still can't figure it out. So they pivot, and it's keeping a close watch on him. They sent spies. I love it. They sent spies to spy on Jesus. Like I don't ever remember seeing where he hid, right? He may have gone to the garden to pray. He may have gone and he may have, stayed with some, unscrupulous people now and again, but it's not like he hid under a rock because he was terrified of what was about to come. No, it was just part of his ministry. But so carrying on in Luke chapter 20, verse 20, it says this: keeping a close watch on them, they sent spies who pretended to be sincere. They hoped to catch Jesus in some things that he had said so that they might hand him over to the power and authority of the governor. The part that I find utterly amazing is that these same geniuses, that every time they turned around and they thought they thought they could turn the tide on Jesus and they thought they could trick him with their words, he already knew what they were thinking. So if you're going to send some spies that are to appear sincere, do you think maybe Jesus is going to recognize them as they walk right through the door? I'm guessing he probably does. But here nor there. So the spies questioned him, "Teacher, we know that you speak and teach what is right and that you do not show partiality, but teach the way that God is in accordance with the truth. Is it right for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" Ooh, is that a trick question? Is it right to pay taxes to the U.S. government or not? Kind of the same difference, isn't it? Oh, look at the old man in the corner going, no. It's the same thing. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? And then this is what he says. He saw through their duplicity, and he said to them, show me the denarius. Whose image is inscribed on it? Caesar's, they replied. And he said to them, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give back to God what is God's. Set. Then they were unable to trap him in what he had said there in public. And astonished by the answer, they became silent. Again, these people are so smart, they're trying to trick him, they can't trick him. Everything that they're doing, they try to trick him, they can't trick him. Now, I want you to just realize that there's other examples of proper and correct answers. Now, what Jesus was getting at when it came to paying taxes to Caesar, or taxes to Uncle Sam, if you want to say it. So you've got God who's the ultimate authority, and then we have an authority here on earth, right, that we're governed by. We're governed by our city council. We're governed by our state and legislature, our county officials, and then we work all the way up to the federal government. And boy, there's a whole lot of layers of minutia there, isn't there? They pile it higher and even deeper the closer you get to the East Coast. But what we're supposed to do is what? We're supposed to live by those rules and paying our taxes rightfully to the Uncle Sam, but also paying attention to the rules that God has set forth in front of us. Now, as a great question that was once posed to me, if somebody says it's okay to do something, in our culture we have laws that make it okay to do moral things, right? They deem that they're moral, we'll say, but yet God says that they're immoral. Who do you follow? God. You follow God. And so at times we have to make a justification in our mind, not in a hard way, but we just have to ask that question. Is this what God wants me to do, or is this what the culture wants me to do? I mean, you can look all around in different things, whether it be your television shows or the things that consume your time. Mine is a little smartphone. I got games on there, and I've got books and stuff I can read on there, and I can Google anything in the world. You can ask me about anything about becoming a first-time farmer with chickens. Boy, my wife and I have read more about chickens than you can ever imagine, and we've only lost 1 out of 18, so we're doing pretty good so far, I don't know if that's good, but for us, that's a victory, Now, it's going to be another 35 weeks before they lay any eggs, and so you're welcome. The price of eggs will be 99 cents a dozen at that time, okay? My wife and I are single-handedly driving down the price of eggs for everyone because we love you all, okay? Now, not to get off base, but now when it comes to paying our taxes and when it comes time for making those decisions, what does God want me to do versus what does the world want me to do? Many times we have to ask ourselves. And I had to ask a minister once because I didn't know the answer to I said, well, when it comes to a tithe, what am I supposed to give 10% of? Simple question, right? What am I supposed to give 10% of? Well, and the minister asked me, he's like, well, do you want your blessings to be on the gross or the net? And that was a really, that was a good answer. It was a great answer. Because he asked me, where's your faith? Now, keep in mind, he did not say you're supposed to give X. He didn't say you're required to give Y. All he answered was, do you want your blessings to be on the gross or the net? He completely left it in my court, as well as my wives. And then we could sit down at the end of, we could budget and figure out, okay, what's our tithe going to be? What's our commitment to the church and to God going to be? And it was great because it gave us an opportunity to grow as a young couple and figure out what our priority actually was. Now, I want to turn all the way back to Genesis. Ernie's not here. He would remember it, but Laurel, you still may. So back in Genesis chapter 19, verse 26, it's great. And it has the story about Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? This is Sodom and Gomorrah. It's the choice between right and wrong is what you're given, all right? And so verse 26 says this, but Lot's wife looked back. Now, if we just stop reading that, you're going to say, who cares, right? Doesn't matter that she looked back, does it? Shouldn't matter at all. All she did was look back. I mean, in fact, most of the time, we all look back when we put our car in reverse, unless you got one of those fancy little screens that tell you where you're going or what you're about to hit. But unfortunately, there's more to the story. The story goes like this. She was told not to look back. She was told to run. And unfortunately, she got to the top of the hill and she looked back. And what then happened is she became a pillar of salt. To look back and to see where you've come from in your life is not always a bad thing. You're not going to always turn into a pillar of salt. And as a matter of fact, when I look back on bad business transactions where I've made a mistake or I've erred in a sermon and I may have misspoke, and I look back and I say, I've got to fix that. I've got to make sure I don't do that a second time. And that's the one thing that I've learned in my own life and in chicken farming, because you know what? They said you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but learn from them. Well, Lot, he learned because he didn't look back. His wife looked back, and because she looked back, she became that pillar of salt. Now, ordinarily, looking back is not a big deal, but the problem was God said, don't do it. It's chapter 19 in Genesis, if anyone's interested. Now, I've got one other example that I want to look at as well when it comes to our decisions. And now, there's a number of times in our lives when we're put in a position where there's a right decision and then there's a righter decision. Does that make sense, right? It's like when your wife says, hey, I got my hair cut. What do you think? Now, that is the most loaded question that's ever crossed the lips of a woman, because every guy, we're doomed. We're doomed. How do you answer it? You can answer it right. Oh, it looks great, honey. Or you can answer it righter. Wow, that's fantastic. I recommend you get that same cut the next time. Or you can answer it the wrong way. It says, hey, I like the cut, but you're getting a little gray right here on top. That's not the way to answer. Trust me, okay? And if you do, you'll only answer that way one time. Now, that being said, decisions, that's what makes us who we are, and our decisions are based on what? On right or righter. Our decisions are based on, do we want to go by the net or do we want to go by the gross? Now, one of my other examples comes out of the book of Acts. Do you guys know you guys already know which one I'm going to talk about, don't you? What story we're going to talk about? Oh my gosh! Wow, chapter 5 in the book of Acts. There's a couple. His name was Ananias, and her name was Sapphira. You know the story from here, right? Yeah, now we all know the story. Now, a man named Ananias, together with his wife, Sapphira, also sold their piece of property. Oh, also, that means we got to go backwards. So we're going to go back a few verses. Why? Because there's more to the story than just what's in front of us. So the believers share their possessions, this is chapter 4, verse 32. All the believers were one in heart and mind. No one claimed that any of their possessions were their own, but they shared everything they had. With great power, the apostles continued to testify to the resurrection of the Lord Jesus. And God's grace was so powerful at work in them all, that there was no needy persons among them. For from time to time, those who owned land or land or houses sold them, brought the money from the sales, and put it into the apostles' feet, and it contributed to everyone who had need. Okay? So, and then there was a story about Joseph, a Levite from Cyprus, whom was an apostle called Barnabas. He sold a field that he had owned, and he brought the money and put it at the feet of the apostles, right? Isn't that what we do? Kind of like when we make our tithes and offerings every week. We don't necessarily sell a house, but if you've sold a house and maybe you've taken and you've given a portion of that to the church, or if you've sold a piece of farm ground, you've given a portion of that, or if you've had an inheritance, maybe you give a portion of that to the church as well. This is where Ananias and Sapphira kick in. Now they took they also sold a piece of property. With his wife's full knowledge, he kept back part of the money for himself, but brought the rest of the money and put it at the apostles' feet. Then Peter said, Ananias, how is it that Satan has so filled your heart that you have lied to the Holy Spirit and you have kept for yourself some of the money you received for the land? Now, I've got two questions. One, how did Peter know that he had kept back some money? Because he himself was filled with the Holy Spirit. Okay? Now, some people would say, well, there was never an agreement, there was never a deal made between Ananias and Sapphira and God saying, oh, well, I'm going to give you 100%, or I'm going to give you 50%, or I'm going to give you 30%. Now, at the time when we're starting to look at this story, in its context, the context was, if you sold your property, you gave it all to the way. You gave it all to the apostles so that they could continue their ministry. But Peter already knew that they had already lied to the Holy Spirit, and he kept some of the money from himself. And he said, didn't it belong to you before it was sold? And after it was sold, wasn't the money at your disposal? What made you think of doing such a thing? Have you not lied just to human beings, but to God? And so the deal was that he was going to give all of the money, but he only gave a portion. He kept some back for himself, which ordinarily wouldn't be a big deal. However, he had already stricken the deal. The Holy Spirit is the one that moved him to sell this land and give it away. Well, when Ananias heard this, he fell down and died, and great fear seized all who heard what had happened. Then some young men came forward, wrapped his body up, and carried him out and buried him. Yes. And then about 3 hours later, of course, she was running a little bit late. They were supposed to meet at the same time. She was running a little bit late. So about 3 hours later, his wife came in, not knowing what had happened, and Peter asked her, tell me, is this the price that you and Ananias got for the land? And her response was, yes. She said, that is the price. And Peter said to her, how could you conspire to test the Spirit of the Lord? Listen, the feet of the men who buried your husband are at the door, and they will carry you out also. And at that moment, she fell down at his feet and died. And then the young men came, and then finding her dead, they carried her out, buried her beside her husband. Great fear seized the whole church and all who heard about the events. Now, when I look at this, and when we look at back to the week of basically the week of crucifixion, what we're looking at is simply this: is we have these opportunities in our lives to make choices. Now, we have the choices on tax day to be upright citizens and give Uncle Sam what Uncle Sam deserves. Or I've known people that have lied, cheated, and stealed. That's great grammar, St. Louis. They've lied, they've cheated, and they've stolen. One man was a professional fisherman for 25 years. It was amazing. Never once made a single dime. Every year it cost him thousands and thousands of dollars, but he was a professional fisherman because he had an accountant that was willing to put that under his business. And I'm like, at some point the IRS is going to say, I don't think you're really in business to be a fisherman, but hey, they did what they did, but that was where he wanted to paint that gray line. Now, unfortunately, and fortunately, we've got multiple opportunities in our lives to look at gray lines that face us, that are right in front of us. And as an example, many of us want to claim our grandkids as dependents, but we can't. Sometimes it might be a good idea, but hey, sometimes we can't. Now, the way that I look at this is simply this: decisions have been made, whether it be through Ananias, Sapphira, or whether it be Lot and his wife, or even when we're looking at paying our taxes and what's the right decision to make. I look at it this way. When you ask a young child, we got a couple kicking around somewhere. When you ask a young kid, would you like cake or would you like a cookie? And they're going to go, okay. Right? Now, keep in mind, this is 3 minutes before we eat dinner, and they're going to I'll take a cake and a cookie, please. Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to give you either one. But you ask them, and when you load the question in such a manner, like, would you like cake or a cookie? What's your favorite, cake or cookie? They're going to say both. Because it doesn't matter. It's sweet, it's yummy, and it tastes delicious. I want them both. You know, it's like, if you're going to give me a bag of Oreos, give me a gallon of milk. I'm going to be a miserable person, but I'm going to just love it because they're delicious together. They go hand in hand. Well, every day in our lives we have decisions to make on who we're going to follow and how we're going to follow them and what's it going to look like. Okay, so as an example, we can follow a superstar that we may know, a movie star that's moved to Ireland, and then now Ireland wants them to move to France, and they're, people are moving. We can follow these people if we want, but is it going to be really a good choice for yours in the long run? When you look at eternity, because eternity is really just around the corner for all of us, but when you look at eternity and how close it is and how long eternity is in its duration, do we want to just keep our eyes on the prize, which in this case is God? Fine, we pay our taxes. Tax day is upon us. Who cares? We pay our taxes. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you die with $1 billion, if you die with $2 in your pocket. The end result is still you have an opportunity to meet your Creator at that point in time. And that's what's most important. And it's up to you to make those decisions that will take you to the next level and where you want to be. So my encouragement is this: always make the righter decision. You can be a nice person, and you can be very generous, and you can be kind, and you can know and love God with all your heart, and that's the right thing to do, right? Or you can be righter than that and do all that stuff and encourage others to follow Him as well, and encourage others to become a part of this community that we have, and encourage people to come and celebrate the resurrection of Christ, who gives us this opportunity of eternity. See, you've got right, and then you've got righter. And now, when it all came down to it, when I first started becoming a believer in Christ, and I sat in the back row, and that was a great place for me because that's where I was comfortable. And it was scary because, hey, how you doing back there? I love it. Yeah, but you're not sneakers, though. See, that's the thing. You're not sneakers. I kid you not. We'd go to church. We'd walk in 5 minutes late, and we would, at the end of church, the end of church, there'd be like a closing song. We'd do a closing prayer. There'd be a closing song. Man, the minute they'd hit that piano, I'd be out the door. Oh, yeah, it was that bad because I was scared of people. Because when I looked around, I'm like, all these people, they've been coming to church here forever. They know everything, and oh my gosh, they've got to be perfect by now. And then I stand up here and I look at them like, look at you clowns. I love it. You make me feel great. Thank you. But, Oliver, are you done yet? Are you getting more cookies? Hey, your sister's a diabetic. Keep an eye on her sugar. Anywho, kids, aren't they great? Oh my gosh, give me some more baby chicks. They're easier to take care of. Anywho, so I'm sorry. So I've lost. So when it all comes down to it, we all have a choice to make. We have a choice to make on where we want to fall on that pendulum of what's our level of commitment going to be to our own families, which is probably harder than to people we don't know. What's our level of commitment going to be to one another? What's our level of commitment going to be to the church or the community? And how about this? What's your level of commitment going to be between you and God? What's that relationship going to look like? Now, I can't make it here every Sunday, unfortunately. I work, but when I do, I take my Bible every day to work with me. I have a work copy, and it's falling apart and missing the first 23 chapters of Genesis, and it's okay because I still got a lot of it. I still got a lot that I got to read and figure out that I still don't know about, But my commitment is to try to grow closer to God. My commitment is I figure, because if I grow closer to Him, that means I'll be a better husband. I'll be a better uncle. I'll be a better great uncle. Hopefully I'll be a better preacher someday. But I just want to be a better steward of what He's given me and what He's given all of us. And I don't want to waste any of the time that He's given us because eternity is just right around the corner. So you can make your decision. Do you want cake or do you want cookies? Which is your favorite? You can have both, by the way. I'm not going to make you pick one over the other. But see, that's where Ananias and Sapphira made the mistake, is they were trying to, they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. All they had to say was, hey, we can't afford to give it all to you, God, but we're going to give you all that we can, and we're going to keep some back, and that's okay. But when they lied to God, and that's where things went sideways. So let's not lie to God, but let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for all the examples of bad decisions that were made. And I just pray that we don't make those bad decisions that follow with that. I pray that we can learn from those decisions. I also pray that as tax time comes forward, that we will be good stewards of the money that you've entrusted us with. I pray that we'll be honest stewards and be a great light for people around us. Now, what we give and how we give back to Uncle Sam, that's between you, me, and the accountant, but you'll know, and I'll know. And so I just pray that you'll bless the decisions that we make and keep everything honest and above board. We're grateful for all the blessings that you've entrusted us with, and I just pray that those blessings of friends and family and community, that those blessings especially will continue to grow deeper as our faith in you and our relationship with you grows deeper as well. We give you thanks especially for your son Jesus, the ultimate sacrifice that he made for us, and all the parables and the teachings that he gave us, so he gave us that roadmap to follow. And we just give you thanks. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
apologize for the fact that I get amused by strange things, and I was just thinking we're singing that. When I fall on my knees, the Lord better have mercy on me or won't be able to get back up again. I've got to that point. But on a lighter note, I told them in Sunday school class today that I had a strange conversation, a surprising conversation with me this week that should not have been a surprising conversation to me, is I was on the telephone with a salesman. And anyway, he was, I'm sure, millennial, because when it came up, what we were talking about, and I said, I quoted the song, I guess I really don't know the title of the song, but it's the one that says, put your hand in the hand of the man. I guess that's maybe the title. I really never have looked at the title. First recorded in 1970 by Anne Murray, more famously recorded in 1972 by Elvis Presley. Who's Elvis Presley? I talked to some kids one time, they didn't know who John Wayne was. So there's a lot of things that young people don't know that we know, and a lot of things we know that probably aren't worth knowing as far as young people are concerned. But anyway, so when it got back to me when I told him, put your hand in the hand of the man who stilled the water. When it came back to me, it was to the man who spilled the water. Well, common sense should tell you, why would you put your hand in the hand of the man who spilled the water? But it went right over the kid's head. So I had to explain it to him, and that was kind of a waste of time too. Which got me thinking about a passage in the Bible that really is very important for several reasons. And I'm going to read it to you from Matthew chapter 14. It says, immediately, this is after Jesus fed the 5,000. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, this is the depth of the night in the dark. During the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You of little faith, why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. And that's where the guy got the idea. His name was Gene McClellan, wrote the song, Put Your Hand in the Hand of the Man Who Stilled the Water. And sometimes we're good at that and sometimes we're not, aren't we? But as far as the disciples were concerned, it was obviously a teaching lesson right at the time. But think how they had to rely on that in future years with what they went through. And what they were able to go through, because really what they did from that day forward, when they needed Jesus, they put their hand in his hand, and he stilled the water. most of you here a long time, and I know in all of your lives you have had very hard things happen. We all do, and very hard things will happen. But Jesus wants you to know that his hand is extended, and we can put our hand in his hand whenever we need to. All the trials of life will someday pass. We've been studying in Sunday school. All the trials of life will someday pass, and they will be like one bad day in our lives, or all of our bad times. We can rely on that because Jesus sacrificed his body for us, his blood for us, and it's taken care of. You know, the disciples, things got tough for them, a lot tougher than they're probably ever going to get for us. And whenever they needed to, they reached out, and I'm sure that Jesus took their hand. Would you pray with me, please? Thank you, Lord, because we can count on you to be there. We can count on you and your son Jesus and his sacrifice to pave our way to heaven so that we will spend eternity with you. That's where we're headed. This life is just a passing, and all we have to do is reach out for Jesus' hand. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. First, the bread that symbolizes his broken body, the cup that symbolizes the blood that was shed to wash away our sins.
Pray, please. Father, we thank you for what you bless us with each and every day. As you have blessed us, may we give back a portion of that blessing, that we can help you and your work here on this earth to spread the gospel message, to let others know about your love, about Jesus Christ, your Son, and the saving grace that is given through his sacrifice on the cross. We thank you and all that we can do. It's in Jesus' name we pray.
Well, I've checked the sheets for prayer concerns, and Donald Fever's still on there for gastro problems. Are there any updates?
Yeah, we can take Donna LaFever off of this and thank everyone for your prayers. After 2 months, as it turned out of hospital, seems to be finding better.
Outstanding. Let's see, put her down for praise. Okay. Any other prayer concerns? Updates?
Well, mine's not an update. Are you ready to move on to prayer concerns?
Yes.
My sister, who lives in the mountains of western North Carolina,
Yep.
is in the path of the wildfires. And like as of Thursday afternoon, no wildfires were about 3 miles from her house. And this morning it started to rain. And so there is a praise in there, but when you look at the fire
exactly what the perfect amount of rain is, okay? But that's great, though. All right. Other prayer concerns? Yes.
Yes, a friend of my son's, Mitchell, I made him know, Marty was two, or I'm sorry, Michael was 22
Yes.
last week.
Who's
Um,
killed on a motorcycle? Okay.
and I just want everybody's prayers for him.
Yes. We will do that. He's on our list. You guys have all seen the Muppets. Do you remember the Muppets from 35 years ago? Remember the two guys that were up in the crow's nest? Sorry, it just hit me. Again, this is what gets me in trouble. We were talking about this earlier, Laurel. Yes, sir. What's that?
Who do you think would walk against?
Hopefully me, because then that means you're leaving everybody else alone. So, any other updates? Whoa, keep bringing them.
My daughter's friend Nicole has a 4-year-old boy named Jack. He has Down syndrome, and he had to have emergency surgery for his stomach. They had taken his intestine out and stuff. And so he's recovering from that right now, but just prayers for him and his recovery.
And he's 4 years old?
Uh-huh,
Okay.
yes. I just have unspoken prayers.
Okay. Unspokens. All right. Any other prayer concerns, praises, or updates? No? Yes? No? Okay. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer then. Heavenly Father, we come to you at this time of service, and it's a great time of service. We've already celebrated how great you are. We've celebrated um, the death, burial, and resurrection of your Son, Jesus, who died for all of us in love because he knows that we're broken individuals and that we're sinners. But what makes this part so great is that you still care about all the little details in our lives that break our hearts or bring us joy. And this is that time. As a continuation of last week's prayers, we continue to pray for George and Janice Ortman, and we continue to pray for all of the all the families that had lost loved ones last week, and then we'll add to that list Michael Mateer now as well. And I just pray that you'll give comfort to all of those family members as they're either searching for answers or trying to arrange services, or even just trying to remember the great things that those people had, how they had a connection with them. And we also just give you praise for Laurel's great niece's, I guess it'd be great nephew, Ripton. We give you thanks for him and her niece Caitlin being, that they're both safe and healthy, and we thank you for that. We give you praise for Donna, and that she's, after 2 months, feeling much better, and we just thank you for being with her and taking care of her. We also continue to pray that you'll be with Walter Ridgely, and that his treatments will continue to go well, as well as the cancer levels with Jordan, and that they'll continue to go down and stay down, and just get rid of them altogether is what we ask, and just heal her from that cancer. And we pray for the upcoming Walk for Life and the impact that it's going to have on our community here in Edinburgh, but in Taylorville and in the entire Christian County area, and the young couples' lives that will affect and change. And so we pray that walk will be a success, and it will be encouraging for those people that are going out and walking, and knowing that they're walking with such great purpose. So we just pray for that in the near and upcoming future. We also give praise for the rain. We give you praise for the rain in North Carolina, 4-year-old boy again, and being able to live his life, and being able to show us what it means to be a kid at heart. And finally, we also pray for all those unspoken prayers that we have. And you know what they are, and I pray that as we bring them to you, that that we'll be able to just know that they're in your court, and that you're going to take care of things. And I also just give thanks and praise for Zach, who's doing well, and the treatments are working, Chuck's son, and we just pray that upcoming preparations for Easter and the Easter cantata and the Walk for Life and all these things that kick off our spring and summer events that we hold to praise you, worship you, and set time aside for you. I pray that they're all super successful, and that all of the praise and all of the glory goes to you. And we just give you thanks and praise, and it's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen. As far as upcoming announcements, again, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, that's important to continue to pray for them, number one. But two, if you have time to donate, twice a month, that'd be great. You don't have to do it all the time, but just any day that you may have an opportunity to spend some time with those high school kids, that'd be great. They will pay attention, and they will learn. And the Loving Arms Walk for Life, we're going to have, I think, well, Laurel, you're still walking in that, right? Okay. If not, we'll wheel you. Either way, we'll get you around the course. So we got the Walk for Life coming up Saturday, April 12th. So don't be afraid to sponsor. Also, Refuge Ranch is going into a process of expansion, so that'd be a good thing. And pray for that. But there's an informative meeting coming up if you want to check that out. And also back in the front foyer there is there's some cards, some information cards for adult education literacy program at Lincoln Land Community College. And so they basically are needing like adult tutors. And so if you could do that, that'd be great. And let's see, upcoming cantata is Sunday, April 13th. So mark that on your calendar as well. So I don't have anything more. Do you have something more?
Search group meeting possibly in fact just a few minutes.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, let's close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we're just grateful for the opportunity that we have to worship you and serve you every day, and worship you today on this beautiful sunny Sunday day. And I just am grateful for the opportunities that we know that are going to be in store for us this upcoming week. And I pray that we'll make righter decisions, not just necessarily easy decisions, but the right decisions that will best impact you, your kingdom here on earth, and then also your kingdom in heaven as well. I pray that you be with the steering committee as they have a meeting here shortly, and be with the elders of this church, the leaders of this church, the worship team at this church, and all the members of this church that put forth all this time, effort, and energy for one reason, and that's for you, to do everything for you, so that more people from our community will seek you by the decisions they make, and we're grateful for them. And so please bless us all as we leave today and throughout this week, and we just give you thanks again for your Son Jesus, and it's in his name we pray.